Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free newsletter at substack.com/@Jeremy. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. All right, so normally we just dig in and work on whatever I'm working on creatively at the moment. However, I'm in sort of an odd space right now because I've been getting deeper and deeper into rewriting the outline for my next comic book project. And I have a page that I've already started, but I've decided that that page is probably not going to be the first page of my comic. I'll probably still use that page, but it's not going to be the first one. So I've been kind of debating whether I want to continue working with that page or if I want to continue with the experiment that I had going on previously, which was taking the first chapter of my previous comic book, Morning Star, and converting it to sort of a vertical scroll format. And I think, honestly, that would be more useful to me at the moment as opposed to drawing pages. So I think we're going to pick up where we left off there. So let me open the page that I had. Let me see. I honestly can't remember if I moved on to like the second or third page or not yet, but let me bring up my screen. And we can just sort of pick up where I'm at right now. And if anybody has any questions or stuff they want to talk about, they can chime in. Let me see here. No, we want a specific. Okay, there we go. So what I have so far is I have taken what was previously a lettered comic page with 7 panels. And I've gone and just broken it up, taking each frame to make it into one slice of a vertical scroll. So I think I got this page down to where I wanted it. And I guess I can move on to page 2. Let me see what I've got. Let me look at my the folder with my files real quick and see if I should already have the next page loaded up here. See, page 1, page 2. All right, so let's go ahead and make so what I'm doing is I'm taking my existing file, duplicating it, and creating a page 2 mobile. Although actually, what might work better, I'm trying to decide whether I want to take this existing page I did and just make this the page 2 and sort of copy things over as I go. What I mean by that is I can take this page that is page 1, issue 1, page 1, mobile, and let me just save that as issue 1, page 2, mobile. Well, hey, all right, I guess I already started. See, this is what happens when you jump around from project to project and then you come back and you look at something that you haven't touched in a month or two. Hey, speaking of not having touched stuff in a month or two, Happy New Year. Don't know why I didn't start with that. Happy New Year. Great to see you guys. Thank you for joining me. I am out of the loop a little bit. Let's see. I see Herman's in the chat. Says, "What's good, G? What's good, peeps? Hope all is well." Yeah, it's funny. I spent most of the holiday break, honestly, catching up on sleep. I've been so exhausted the past few months that I was just like, I just want to rest. Did a lot of personal like sketching and doing some basically fixing bad figure drawings. Those videos that I did a lot of that for myself, kind of off camera, just doing a deep dive into some places where I need to strengthen my craft. And honestly, it was soothing to just sit there, look at drawings, like, oh, well, this isn't working. Let me try this. Let me try that. Let me break out an anatomy book for this particular subject. Let me go study this thing. I see Chris in the chat. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you. But yeah, I mean, things are going to jump right back into the chaos of work. I already had a couple of things from clients pop up that I need to start addressing. But life keeps lifing, and all you can do is keep putting one foot in front of the other. When you have a chance to rest, take it. That's the biggest advice I can give you. Hustle culture is real, but hustle culture will also kill you. Let's see here. Herman says, "You're not the only one who's out of it. I've been working ever since. I'm just a little tired, but I'm here." Well, I appreciate you making it. Like I said, that hustle culture, it's weird because I think all of us went through a period in the early to mid 2000s when grind was like what you had tattooed over your heart. And now people are getting it crossed out, or they're getting added to it, ground down. So at a certain point of grinding, you got to be like, all right, how long do I want to live like this? How long can I live like this? That isn't to say that there's no grinding going on in my world right now, because there absolutely is. But it's a matter of, trying to find that balance. Okay, so I see where I left off here. So I've got just the page by itself on one side with no dialogue, and then I've got the actual page with the word balloons. Huh. Okay, I see. I just took the standalone image. So this page that I have right here is just a flattened JPEG or TIFF. And then this page is the TIFF without dialogue, so I can kind of move the dialogue around as I need to. And now I can go and open the just regular lettered page. And grab this dialogue. Okay, so this is super tiny. You would think I would already have all the dialogue blown up to the correct size. Let's see here. Amar's in the chat. Happy New Year, Jeremy, and everyone else. Happy New Year to you, Amar. Welcome. Good to see you as always. Herman's like, what's good? He's like, same shit, different day. That's about right. Oh, Kingslow Fitness, happy holidays. My New Year starts on my birthday. Declared. Well, happy birthday, sir. Congratulations on surviving and thriving for another year, for growing and continuing another journey around this solar system. All right. Again, starting when I don't have recollections of where I left off, it is interesting. I'm looking at this word balloon and I'm like, did I, because my normal MO would just be to scale everything up. Because this is the correct word balloon for this page. Did I turn off all my lettered layers? Oh, I was trying to figure out how to split this page up. Huh. Wait a second. I should edit my preferences real quick. So that I can scale this up properly. This doesn't have to be like 1-to-1 exactly the same size as it was. Let me see if I can scooch this down a little bit more. Let's see here. Gary Hodges in the chat from Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. Good afternoon, Gary. How you doing? Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness had me celebrating early. He said his birthday's not until August. Man. Okay. Well, then I guess you're just giving us early notification. That if I forget when August rolls around, I wish you a happy birthday early. Let's see. Hi, Dylan. He says, hi, Jeremy in chat. Happy New Year. Just got back from walking my dog. All right, got to get the dog out, get some poops, let him smell those trees and those fire hydrants. Oh, and of course, thank you, Herman, for the encouragement, the reminder. And said, peeps, hit that like button, please. Hit that like button. If anybody new rolls into the live stream, hit that subscribe button. Hang out with us. We talk art and comics and creative process. And if you know somebody who you're like, oh, they should definitely check this out, that's what the share button's for. And here we go. little philosophy here. Amar is like, you are born, each day you rise anew. Death is the material form. Death in material form comes only when this host is no longer needed on this plane. There we go. That's some Alan Watts shit right there. Oh, Gary says, I'm listening and watching AFK, packing up the first wave of shipments of my latest issue of Dinosaurs vs. Mars Bots product placement. Folks, you need to head on over to Gary's Etsy shop. Let me see if I've got his banner in here. I should. Here we go. Etsy.com/shop/dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. Go get it. It is a fantastic series. You know, with a name like Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots, you're going to think it's like this cute, funny, like Tops Mars Attacks thing. It is some serious, like X-Files, deep state alien conspiracy stuff. It is really, really good. It is really moving. It is well drawn and well told. So beautiful art, beautiful story. I highly recommend it, and I need to go get that new issue myself. So peep it. Let's see here. And Amar says, no, I have to look up Alan Watts. Yeah, Alan Watts is worth listening to. He's I guess he's a philosopher. I've never really looked into how he's framed, other than a guy who gives a lot of audiobooks, a lot of books he's written, and it's sort of like, you would call it self-help guruism, but it's less of a Tony Robbins empowerment, and it's more of just be happy with who you are and be present. Like it's very encouraging, but it's encouraging kind of sort of a low key, you're okay, be yourself. If you don't know yourself, figure yourself out, but just live in yourself. So I definitely think he's worth checking out. There's tons of his stuff on YouTube. So let's see here. And Herman said, he got you, G. He said, well, my birthday is this month. My bones are getting older. Well, happy birthday to you as well. Yeah, we're all pushing through. We're all time is a flat circle, but that flat circle is grinding. Now I don't want to get back onto the grinding grind. Let's see here. Let's see here. Dylan says things could be better, Herman, but I'm keeping positive. Well, you know, hopefully you can find a little bit of sunshine in each day, Dylan, because yeah, I know that for a lot of us, we're like, thank God this last year is over. But for a lot of us, the stuff that we're going through that made the previous year difficult is still in progress. So just, you know, stick with it. You know, walk your dog, touch grass, do all the things you can to take care of yourself, keep yourself healthy and happy. I think I hear one of my cats scratching at my studio door, which I have closed at the moment. Oh. It is not one of my cats. It is my wife scratching at the studio door. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Kingsville Fitness says, same to you, bro. To Herman, get the body moving, though. We all need to move nowadays. Imagine moving as much as you can in a box. As long as you have space to move around, even outside, do so. Yeah, you know, I normally my wife and I like to go hiking almost daily, but it's been raining the past week, which we're not complaining about. California needs rain. We're grateful to have it, but it means we can't go hiking in the woods like we normally do. And I have physical therapy exercises I'm supposed to do for my back and for sciatic pain, so I try to do those. But something that multiple people have been recommending for me for years, and then even my wife brought up the other day, was doing Tai Chi. So we may find some Tai Chi videos and just try and get into some of that, just to like Kingsville Fitness is saying, just having movement every day. You know, it's like sitting is the new smoking. So we gotta get a move on. Let's see here. Yeah, Kingsville Fitness says I've been listening to Napoleon Hill lately. This is maybe AI type, but inspiring. Irma says slowly trying to work on the exercise thing, but working on getting my eating habits right. I will tell you what I've started doing, and it was a hard transition for me. But what I do is I have usually most days of the week I have a salad for lunch, and just having one healthy meal a day will make it so that I don't feel that guilty about whatever I eat the rest, for dinner. And a lot of times what I'll do is I may even for dinner, because my wife's vegetarian, we'll have vegetarian dinners. And I don't always succeed, but I try to restrict myself to only eating meat on the weekends. But during the week we'll have fish, seafood, that kind of stuff. But in terms of eating like chicken or anything else, chicken, or not that I eat a lot of beef, but I try to restrict that to like one serving on the weekend. So, going cold turkey and trying to change your eating habits abruptly is difficult. Whereas just saying, all right, even if I, just getting to having a salad every day as a meal was like enough of a step that like half, I'm eating twice as healthy as I used to just by making that switch. So let's see here. Dylan says, I've lost 12 pounds in the last month. You could call me a skinny bitch. Congratulations. Let's see, when you're walking the dog, you're getting exercise too. That's good. It's good. Keep it up. So here, Amar says, time is endless. So our time is but a ripple, meaningless in time, yet only meaningful to us and the ones we touch. Yeah, you're going to like Alan Watts. This here, Amar says, I spent the majority of my adult life eating one meal a day. You know what? That intermittent fasting definitely works. I wish I could stay with it. My problem is that I was an athlete in college, and basically from high school on, for like, through the first decade of my adult life, my body was programmed to eat multiple small meals throughout the day because I constantly needed energy because I was constantly burning it. Even after I got out of college, I was still working out a lot and I was extremely active. I biked to and from work for a lot of that time. And, now, decades later, the lifestyle shifts, the body needs to shift as well. Hermit is like, Jeremy is lettuce boy. Said, I need more salad. I do eat spinach every day, or I do soup every day to fill up. And it's funny, for a long time when I was doing the salads, now I usually will get a nice spring mix, but a lot of times it was like I would just use the pre-washed lettuce, the pre-washed spinach, would wash it again, but then I have like a spinach salad, like spinach and tomato with some dressing on it. Let's see here. Kingsville Fitness says gymnastic strength training helps a lot. Shout out to Coach Somer. The training is for adults, as it was for the kids growing into it, but at your own pace. It's an affiliate to that training. Let's hear. Dylan says, thank you. You're welcome. Amar said, when I heard about it online, I didn't even realize I'd been intermittent fasting for most of my life. Well, you know what that means? That your body is instinctually trying to get you to do natural, healthy things. So I'm glad you're working with a good natural instinct. Let's see here. So I'm back to this panel. And for me, what I'm sitting here futzing around with is I'm just trying to figure out the best way to lay out this page and place this balloon. I didn't really want to re-letter anything, but let's see how this looks. No, because what I was going to do is just split the what into its own balloon so that I can make this fit along the top a little bit better. But the problem with that is that then I'm starting with the character's name, Zachariel, which is a long word to have as the first panel of a word balloon. That's another thing. I am not an expert letterer, but the one thing I know is try not to put long ass words. Try not to start a sentence with a long ass word, because it's not going to lend itself to the rounded elliptical shape of a balloon. You want to have your big words in the middle of sentences. You want to have short words at the beginning and ends of sentences. So as it stands now, the panel is kind of well balanced, but I really don't like the idea of breaking it apart and redoing that. Well, you know what? My whole thing is, let's just try and see what happens. I know that this is probably a bad idea, but a lot of what I have done in art is taking things that I know are bad ideas and trying them anyway just to see what happens. So let's see what happens if I take this. I mean, honestly, I don't even know if removing that first line even gets me any closer. Well, if I make the balloons flat against the top of the panel as opposed to rounded, then maybe it kind of helps fit a little bit more. Hang on, let me hit save. See, it's kind of a trip because when I'm actually working, I can't see the comments. It'd be nice if I could find a way to have a floating comment window while I'm doing the actual design work on the side. Let's see here. Scroll back up here. More food talk. Amar says, I was vegetarian for 11 years until the past couple of years. And so once I get back on track with my life, I need to get back to it. Dylan says, I'm going to see if I can cut out breakfast. I'll even test out one meal a day. I got to stretch the money. Yeah, it is tough. I will tell you that in the times when I have done, like, not necessarily intermittent fasting, but just fasting in general, I found that fasting from dinner to dinner works best because I found it. This is my personal experience. Everyone's body is different. In my experience, I found that falling asleep when I was hungry was very, very hard. But when you wake up, your body is kind of reset and you don't get really, really hungry until you've been up for a few hours. So even though everyone says, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, I found it was easier for me to wake up, not eat breakfast, not eat lunch, then have dinner. And then if I was going to have enough, then go to bed and then repeat that cycle. That was easier for me than waking up, having breakfast, not eating all day, and then going to bed hungry. That I found much more difficult. So if you're going to play with the one meal a day thing, I mean, that right there, you've got three options. You can make your one meal a day breakfast, you can make it lunch, you can make it dinner. And I think depending on your lifestyle, that's going to determine which one works best. So if you try it and it doesn't work, maybe try switching whichever meal it is that you choose to have. Let's see here. Oh, back to the vegetarian stuff. I love how you make it sound like like I'm the Walking Dead. He said, I did not like eating any flesh at all. Oh, Amar says, "Wait, gee, have you ever did a full color comic or graphic novel?" I have done a full color 24-page story. It was in a comic anthology called Samurai, which the first volume and the first chapter of the story is available on Amazon. I wasn't the publisher, but it was a creative co-op that I was part of, and they only published one volume, and it had the first 8 pages of a 24-page story. And I am not a good colorist. I am not. I have multiple books on comic book coloring, and I will say, out of all of the skills that I have, coloring is the one I'm the weakest at. And even though I do standalone color illustrations, comic book coloring is something I'm very weak at. It's a skill that I have a lot of respect for. I like the fact that people have moved from calling them colorists to color artists, because I think coloring, as the technology has improved, has carried a lot more of the weight in visual storytelling. I tend to work in black and white because, well, I like the look of black and white comics. Like, if you give me the colorized version of Lone Wolf and Cub, which I don't think it's been colorized, but I'd rather read the black and white version of Lone Wolf and Cub than to read a color version. I like Frank Miller's Sin City in black and white. I like the Hernandez brothers. I'm not anti. I have tons of color comics that I love, but for me, I don't feel a strong need to make color comics, and it allows me to hide one of my weaknesses. I'm putting it out there. I am ducking by not doing the color work. If I had the budget for it, I would just assume hire a colorist and have someone who is really, really good at recolor my work, as opposed to me doing it myself. So I've done one color comic in my entire career. I have another comic book that I did for a toy company that was colored by someone else. But even that comic, oh, it is not my best work. Let's see here. See, yeah, even Dylan picked up on what I said about the not eating flesh at all. I said, "Amar, are you a zombie?" Let's see here. Yeah, and Amar says probably also being an artist contributed to the one meal a day as well. He said, "I didn't even know of the starving artist thing till I was living it." Yeah, I mean, when I was living on a budget, I wouldn't necessarily eat ramen nonstop because the sodium was too much for me. But I've loved popcorn ever since I was a little kid. And so I found that, like, having a bowl of popcorn with any meal. So if I was just having a small sandwich and a popcorn. Even now, when I have salads, I will have a salad and a small bowl of popcorn. Like, I'll make a full bowl and I'll eat half of it with the meal and then put the half in Tupperware to either have tomorrow or have for a snack later in the day. So I eat tons of popcorn, which also real good for that fiber. Keep that colon clean. Got to keep that colon squeaky clean. Got to get in there, scrub it. Let's see here. I'm definitely gonna, whatever I'm gonna name when I'm done with this stream, the name's gonna be something about the diet of the artist, because we're definitely doing the food talk on this one. Yeah. Kingsville Fitness says eat like a monk when you're actually hungry, and then they say eat when the work is done. That kind of helps nowadays as we're more stationary. I'm trying to remember, believe it or not, I think I was listening to Henry Rollins, the musician and poet and spoken word. When I say musician, I mean singer, performer, but author. I was listening to him, and he was talking once about the diet, and he said that you have breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and supper like a pauper. So your meals get progressively smaller as you go through the day. So at dinner time, you have like a really light, small meal. These are all things that I have never really been able to adhere to. Even now, I still feel like my diet is me just learning to not stuff myself, because I'm one of those people who I always had to clean my plate when I was a little kid. So I now have to literally, when I'm eating, I have to say, I see that there is more food. My body is telling me that I'm full. I need to stop and I need to take what's rest and put it in a container and have it tomorrow. And that's something that I've gotten much better at this past year, but it's still something where it's not completely instinct. Sometimes if I'm not thinking about it, or if the food just happens to be something that's really savory, I'll realize that I'm eating it because I'm enjoying the taste, not because I'm hungry. And that's when I need to say, stop. So it's a, all these things of like modifying our eating habits, our behavior habits. It's a challenge, but the challenge is awareness, being aware that you're doing the thing that you want to change. Because when you're aware of it, then you can say, all right, let me just make an adjustment. So Herman says, and what software app did you use to color Lucifer Morningstar? Said you kept it limited, just blacks, whites, and grays. Would you color or ink anything like manga? So I did it all. I did the first 2/3 of it in Photoshop, and then the machine I had, the operating system, couldn't update anymore, and I switched over to Affinity Photo. So the last, I want to say, issues, either issues 7 and 8 or 6, 7, and 8 were all gray toned in Affinity Photo, and I say gray toned instead of colored. The inks were traditional, so I still ink on well, back then I inked on Bristol board. This comic is going to be the first time I'm doing the whole thing digital, and even now I'm thinking like I still go back and forth between like, am I being a sucker for not doing this? Because I mean, I don't sell my original pages, at least not yet. So I'm wondering, am I making a stupid mistake by not making a hard copy physical book? Because in this digital age, I feel like physical artists the value of physical artwork is reemerging. Let's see here. Yeah, Herman says they tend to do a lot of heavy inks and use a lot of gray tones a lot. Yeah, I would say that the influence in my work is equal parts manga and American black and white comics, older stuff like Alex Toth, and then American indie work from the 80s and 90s, like Howard Chaykin's Black Kiss. It's an amazing black and white comic, very dirty. It's definitely a not safe for work comic. But I would say stuff like Howard Chaykin's Black Kiss would be a big influence. Let's see here. Hang on, let me mute this. It's like working in an office. I've got the office phone going off. Yeah, our house phone doesn't ring that often. I'm trying to think of who else. I mean, there's tons of black and white comics. Really, you could say that manga was probably the biggest influence, because I'm looking at the bookcase above me right now, and over there I see all 4 issues of Masamune Shiro's Appleseed is on my bookshelf. 3 out of the 4 volumes are Studio Proteus. One of them is a Dark Horse volume. I see Ghost in the Shell and Orion. So I think that's like my Shiro section of my bookshelf. But yeah, I that's the other thing. I like all kinds of comics. So when I say that I like black and white comics and I want to make black and white comics, it doesn't mean that I think that's what all comics should be. Like a lot of people, when they say that they do like a certain thing, they're saying they're making it like they're making a statement on this is what the form should be. I'm like, it's more like I've found something that works for me. Also, there's the printing factor, because printing in color is more expensive. So just by virtue of choosing black and white, it makes me doing self-published comics more affordable. I think even if I were doing full color, I would consider doing black and white versions for print, just to make it affordable. I'm looking around my studio now and I'm seeing like 6 volumes of Sin City, although one of those is in color. Oh, there's a British comic book called Modesty Blaze. It's a long-running British newspaper strip, and that's a black and white strip. I love that series. It's kind of like a cheeky, pulpy, you know what because it's a crime story, and it's a woman who was once a leader of a criminal organization underworld, and she burned all the criminals on her way out and left, and now she works with like Interpol and the law enforcement agencies to now catch criminals. So I mean, on one hand she's kind of a snitch, on the other hand she's a badass, and she's bringing criminal organizations down around the world. um she looks a lot like Catwoman. So if various iterations of Catwoman. Imagine if Catwoman were working abroad. And I have not read Darwin Cook's Catwoman miniseries where she's traveling the world. It's on my list of stuff to read, but that's another black and white book that I really enjoyed. All right, let me get back caught up in the comments. I got in my head a little bit. Let's see here. This here, Amar says, I always said when I was young, I live by the fact that I eat to live, not for enjoyment, but as necessity. I cannot say the same. For me, I really do enjoy a good meal. I enjoy good food. I enjoy things that are savory. And a lot of times I am honestly eating something because I'm enjoying the sensations of the taste of it. Like there's certain foods we can't keep in the house because I'm like, I will just keep eating it just because. I love me some sushi. I try not to eat unhealthy stuff, but like iced oatmeal cookies are like crack to me. I can't stay off those. On the healthy side, I love apples. I eat apples nonstop. Apples, oranges, grapes, raisins, lots of fruits. So I mix it up. But for me, it is equal parts sustenance and the sensual pleasure of flavor. It adds something to my life. So for me, it's not just survival. See here, Amar says, I swore not to be fat at all costs. I will starve before that happens. Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness says, that look for narration without that look more for narration without the speech bubble. Let's see here. Oh, Herman says I can pop it out, the chat. That is a good question. I'm trying to figure out how to do it. Let me see here. Because I know, well, what you're saying, I think I know what you're saying. It's just that I can make the chat appear on the screen while I'm doing it, but that will only show up in what you guys see right now with my little head on the side and the screen with Adobe Illustrator on the other. I can make the chat appear on top of the Adobe Illustrator screen so you guys can see it, but that will still only be for the live stream. When I switch right now, if I go back here, so I want to grab a piece of dialogue and move this around, the only way for me to have the chat visible is if I were to drag this screen over, and then I can, like, you guys can't see it, but if I drag this screen over, now I can kind of see the chat while I'm working. But it also means that the amount of space I have to actually design is now tiny. So it's sort of like I have to design for a little bit and then go back and check the chat, and then design a little bit and then go back and check the chat. It's doing both at the same time. I mean, to be honest, even if I could float the chat on top of Illustrator while I was working, it would be in the way because I need to go over and look at the layers palette. I use the layers palette a lot when I am using Illustrator. A lot of people just reach in and grab stuff, click and move it around, but I like to go through the layers and select through the layers. I don't know why. I'm weird like that. Amar says, if you used OBS, you could overlap the comments that way. I know I could. I don't like OBS. But thank you for the tip. Let's see here. And Herman says, Amar, do you follow the teachings of Elijah Muhammad? He said, "I have the message and how to eat to live" book by him. He said, as a young brother growing up, it was a prerequisite to have books like these. Um, and Amar says, I think the middle of the day, anytime between 12 and 2, if you can do, is the best for big one big full meal is the best. He said, this way in the morning you can fast, flushing your body out with water and juices. Same in the evening. And let's hear. Herman says, wait, Lone Wolf and Cub? They have movies based off that character. Is it a samurai and kid? I'm not sure. I want to say that there is a movie. In fact, there might even be an anime of it. But because I know The Blind Swordsman, which is not Lone Wolf and Cub, completely different series. I think it's Zadaochi. I can't pronounce it, but that has a very, very long-running black and white TV series, and I think you can get it on Hulu or a few other streaming services. So that's definitely been adapted to TV. Yeah, I can't tell you for sure if there's a Lone Wolf and Cub live action or anime, but it feels like there should have been an anime at some point. And I see James says, I'm just stopping by for a bit. Welcome, James. Good to see you as always. Wow, I'm like almost 20 minutes late to his comment. But glad to see you. Let's see here. Chris says, this looks good. Looks like your new comic is coming along nicely. Well, first off, Chris, thank you. But I should tell you that this is actually my old comic, because what I'm doing is I'm taking Morningstar and I am converting it from regular comic book pages into a vertical scroll because I want to see how it reads, because I plan to make my next comic as a vertical scroll. And I'm kind of trying to figure out how I'm going to compose the pages based on that. So I just wanted to see how it works, see if it gives me any ideas in terms of panel composition. Let's see here. But thank you for the kind words. And Dylan says, have you heard of Master Shang He? It says, I'm getting into him more at the moment. I have not. And you're not talking about Shang-Chi, the Marvel, the comic, the Master of Kung Fu. I'm just asking because I am speaking out of ignorance. I do not know one way or the other whether the other one is a thing. Let's see here. Amar says, no zombies eat me. No zombies eat me. I don't like it or desire it. Said, I have chosen to eat because I also don't like chewing. That's, what's weird, because I love chewing and just getting, chewing is a big part of the digestive process. You're pre-digesting your food. I mean, just, if you want to have soups, you can do that. Avoid chewing. Herman says, I would eat ramen, but ditch the seasoning. That MSG would blow my head off. I also became very sensitive to it when I pinched a nerve. You know what I did do, which still is a fair amount of sodium, but what I would do is I would make ramen, and then instead I would either use just half of the seasoning packet on a packet of ramen, or I would make it, drain it, and then add low sodium soy sauce and just sort of drizzle a little bit on, just enough to get a flavor. I mean, even the low sodium soy sauce still has a lot of salt, but that would be the other thing I would do when eating ramen. Let's see here. Amar says, no, I don't study Muhammad, but I've been thinking this way since the 90s. Kingslow Fitness says, drink plenty of water to flush out the system. Helps when wake and gravity falls. Amar says, I remember eating too much at the start of the day, and the end was never good. Yeah, finding these eating patterns and habits are challenging. And Kingslow Fitness is drinking coffee at the moment, as I may or may not go through that process. This is something that I started doing in the past year, and originally it was very, very hard for me. I drink 2 cups of coffee a day. I have one in the morning, and then I have one around lunchtime. And what I started doing is, for my first coffee of the day, I drink it black. I don't put any creamer in, No cream, no sugar, just black coffee. And that's simply because my blood sugar is a little higher than it should be. And so, like that's the other thing. I mean, like sedentary is the new smoking, then sugar is the new drinking. So I've definitely been trying to cut back on my sugar, or if I am having sugar, to try having it be natural sugars that are in fruits and vegetables. But the I really like creamer. Creamer is what got me to like coffee in the first place, because I used to hate coffee, but then I needed to stay awake, needed to get through, so I started putting creamer in my coffee, and now I've gotten really used to it and enjoy the taste enough that when I had to cut back on the creamer and the sugar, I hated the taste of black coffee. And if it's really, really strong coffee, I probably still won't like it. But for like the average cup of coffee, I can have a cup of black coffee now, and it's fine. Let's see here. Amar says, also when I was vegetarian, I never got the itis. That's a real good point. Real good point. Because the thing is, it takes more energy to break down meat in your stomach, and that will make you drowsy. The itis is just your body saying, hey, I need to take some of your energy so I can digest this food. So I'm going to put you in sleep mode. I'm going to put you on standby. That's what it is. Stomach says, hey, standby. You just pause, shut down. We'll turn you back on a little bit once we do a little bit of this digestion. So yeah, you gotta be careful with all that. And Dylan said, I just ordered some ramen and other ingredients and groceries. We'll go real easy on those seasoning packets on the ramen, man, because it'll catch up with you real quick. Herman says, word. Amar says, same, but it's a discipline that I've been off and on. I tried it, but I try to eat healthy and I count calories. Amar says, I read all the labels. Sadly, I wish I did more when I was young. The age and the internet made me even more aware of how much of lab rats we've all been. Kingsville Fitness says, I currently use Affinity Photo 2 on my old iPad. The better I get, the better I get. That is a great, that's a great mantra. And James says, I don't know if you keep old calendars, but I decided my retro horror calendar to keep my retro horror calendar because I figured the illustrations could make for great inspiration. The one I have for this year's illustration for February of a wine glass being held next to a woman's face, exposing her skull. I believe it was the cover to Chamber of Chills 19. I recognized it because a black and white version was the cover of the Misfits single Die, Die, My Darling. I will check that image out. I don't think I've seen that cover. I know the Misfits song, but I've never seen that image. I don't usually keep, oddly enough, not only do I don't keep old calendars, I don't keep a calendar anymore at all on my walls. My wall spaces either has reference material tacked up, or I mean, I will put up inspirational art, but usually it's art from friends of mine. I've got some comment pages from my buddy Carl Altstetter that I have on the wall. My friend Alejandro Lee gave me a really nice print that I have on the wall. Let's see. The comic artist Gabriel Hardman, he threw a sketch in when I ordered a copy of a graphic novel from his website, just because I've met him at conventions a couple of times. We're not friends, but I think he just remembered that I'm somebody who he's interacted with a lot, and he just was super generous, threw in a quick head sketch of Batman. I've got that, so it's stuff like that I put on my wall. Not that I think there's anything wrong with keeping old calendars. I say whatever inspires you. By the way, as a blanket statement for 2026, you can just presume, my mantra is you do you. Because I know that a lot of times people will ask, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I mean, I appreciate people wanting my opinion on things and my takes, but my general take is that all of us operate differently, and all of us need to find what works best for us. So when people ask my opinion, where I feel like I'm useful is in rattling off what works for me and things I have seen that work for other people. But I try to be somebody who's more of offering options as opposed to being prescriptive, like you do this. With the exception of going to live drawing. That I tell everybody who's interested in making art, you got to go to figure drawing. That's the only thing that I'm prescriptive about. Everything else, you do you. Let's see here. By the way, we're getting to the top of the hour here. So I'm going to get through these last few comments and then we're going to call it a wrap. Yeah, this was definitely the food episode. Amar says, eating what tastes good instead of what is good. We're programmed since birth to eat crap. That's why we have so many health issues. I 100% agree with you. I would say that for me, I definitely enjoy the taste of food. What I've been trying to do is I agree with you that we've been programmed to eat like crap and we are motivated by the flavors of things. But my response to that is not to live an ascetic monk-like lifestyle in terms of my diet. My goal is to try and find either healthier foods that taste good or finding healthy ways to season healthy food so that I can still enjoy and get all of the flavor sensations that I'd like. I feel like, I don't want to deny myself the joy of eating. I think there's a lot of joy in culinary foods, and I feel that it's more work to eat healthy, but also eat flavorful. But I feel that it's work that is, it's just extra time and attention. It's not like climbing Mount Everest when I say it's extra work. It's putting in the effort for it. And I personally feel like I like good tasting food enough that I'm willing to put in that work. Yeah. So let's see here. All right. Dylan, see, I'm just getting caught up to where my phone was ringing in the chat, which I can see here was like 15 minutes ago. Dylan says the office phone. So here, Kingslow Fitness, Black Kiss, mental note in the chat, research mode now. It's a book by the comic cartoonist Howard Chaykin. So he's both the writer and artist. He's done 3 volumes of Black Kiss. So the original one came out, I want to say, in like the late 80s. Then he did a Black Kiss 2 in the mid 2000s, which honestly, I loved the first Black Kiss. The second one I didn't enjoy as much, only because the story just was so much more brutal. And I haven't read the third one, but I mean, overall, I love Howard Chaykin's art and his writing. I just haven't had time to work through his entire body of work because he continues to produce work. Even now, he's still cranking out comics. There's a really cool series he did that was written by the current Batman writer, Matt Fraction. There's sort of this weird adult murder mystery called Satellite Sam. And it's very much right up Howard Chaykin's alley. And when I listened to an interview with Matt Fraction talking about it, he said that somehow he tricked Howard Chaykin into drawing his Howard Chaykin fan fiction, which I think is the most brilliant meta description I've ever heard. But also Howard Chaykin has a series called Hey Kids Comics, which he's writing and drawing. And Howard Chaykin has been around since the 70s. For those who don't know, like, he shared a studio with like Frank Miller and Walt Simonson. I believe Dean Haspiel was his assistant. And before that, Howard Chaykin was an assistant to Gil Kane. And so he's seen comics from like the 70s, and obviously, reading them, even earlier than that as a kid. And Hey Kids Comics is basically a fictional story of the comic industry from the 70s through the 90s to the modern age. So he takes, I guess, his whole experience and the people he's met and the stories he's lived, and a lot of stuff that it probably would not be kosher to tell only because some of the people that are involved are still alive. But basically, it's kind of like a tell-all telling of the dirt, but it's fictionalized. The stories may be true, but the names have been changed to protect the guilty. Which I think I'm stealing that exact line from an interview that he gave at some point. Point being, Black Kiss is just one of many things Howard Chaykin has done that is highly worth checking out. It's here. Amar says, I looked up and followed Alan Watts on YouTube. I've seen him before, but never really listened to him. He's really mellow to listen to. He's great to listen to while you're drawing, because usually there'll be like either there's music playing underneath and it's very soothing, or even when he's just talking, he's a very calming, soothing voice. And Herman says, you still have a house phone? I said, me too. I'll forever keep a landline. Said once Baltimore had that 2014 earthquake, people were panicking, couldn't get in touch with family members. And he said, I just called my mother on my landline called my mother's landline from my landline. It's like, yeah, I mean, they stick around. They come in handy. And Amar says, living in color is way more complicated, complex, and confusing. Living in black and white is more simple and straight to the point. And it's funny when you say that, because in comics, I think that's very true. I think in real life, I'm somebody who is aware of my own black and white, yes or no tendencies, but I try to view the world as a spectrum. I try to view most things not in absolutes. I don't always succeed, but that's my effort, is to look at things in kind of the world is more complicated, but it's also richer, much like a painting with a lot of subtle tones when you look at it, when you look at all the different colors. So it's a good point, Amar. But it's a matter of, do you want simple or do you want rich? And it doesn't mean that simple can't be rich, but there's a lot more richness in the subtle shades. Herman says the original Ninja Turtles comics were printed in black and white, which I believe was due to a printing eyeing error. I will tell you that I know so little about the original Ninja Turtles, and I think the only comics I've read are like the Archie comics that came out when the first version of the animated series was on in the 80s. And that's not out of any disdain for the Ninja Turtles, because I think that I just never made it a point to do a deep dive in them. When the black and white boom happened, I was just barely getting into comics, and I was probably still more into the toys than I was the comics. I mean, what's weird is I can actually even remember the Ninja Turtles book being on my local, not even my comic shop. This was before I started going to comic shops, but in a local news store, the newsstand bookstore in my neighborhood. I can remember seeing it there and picking up and flipping it through it, but I never sat down and really picked it up. But I think that as part of comics history, I should go back and read them. And also, I like Kevin Eastman's artwork. It's chunky and, kind of gnarly looking, but there's something about that I really respond to. So, and also I know that they brought in a ton of great artists later on, Michael Zulli. I don't want to start naming artists that worked on Ninja Turtles because I don't know enough of them. I've just heard Michael Zulli is the first one that popped into my name, but I've heard interviews with so many different artists over the years that have worked on Ninja Turtles. I know there's a lot that's worth checking out. So Kingslow Fitness says, I guess more important than color and light is visual, where the shadows hit first, where the shadows hit. Well, I would say that there's a saying amongst painters, and I think it's among illustrators in general, which is that value, meaning your blacks and whites and grays, not just shadows, but the overall value composition of your piece. Values do all of the work. Color gets all of the credit. And that makes it sound like it should actually be very easy to be a color artist. And I think that color is simply another facet in which some people have a strength and some don't. Like, the way I've mentioned before that if I don't pay attention to my proportions, they get really wonky really quickly. It might be that I am an artist who has more weaknesses than I do strengths. I would honestly say that my only real strength is storytelling and interesting ideas. I'd say that most of the other things that are involved in making comics or picture making in general are elements that I work towards, but I work to improve. I don't have a lot of natural strength in them. But I think that for a lot of artists who just, the same way that I'm pretty good at story and story just makes sense to me, there's a lot of artists for whom color just makes sense to them. And if color makes sense to you, you probably have a great sense of value as well, just in terms of black and white and gray tone composition and how value can separate planes. It can separate foreground and background. It can define shape and structure. Those are all the things that value does. Well, I guess that's scratching the surface. There's probably more that value does, but I think my brain is too mushy right now for me to give a detailed analysis beyond that. See here, Herman says, yes, open the full desktop of YouTube. In the far right menu, you can pop out the chat. Oh yeah, well, that's what I was saying earlier, is that popping out that chat will only do that for the interface on YouTube. It won't do that for me while I'm in Illustrator. Sits here. Kingslow Fitness says to Amar, when it comes to first things, I've seen color and light and shadow before color. Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness is like dual screen. I mean, I can set up dual screen and see if there's a way to do that. But it really comes down to the fact that that screen that you're seeing, it will really cut off what I'm doing if I have the chat running while I'm doing actual design work. Let's see here. I see 2Dub Entertainment says, are these your own comics or does this work for something else? These are my own comics. This is a page from the first issue of a 8-issue series that I already published called Morning Star. And it's a retelling of Lucifer's Fall from Heaven as a Western. And I'm going through and taking the first chapter, and I'm chopping it up into vertical scroll panels to post on social media. And that's just sort of an exercise to help me in terms of figuring out how I want to really handle composition for my next comic book that I'm working on. And by the way, thank you for that question. Let's see here. All right, I've done almost no work this stream. I'm going to get through, when I get to the end of the comments, we're going to wrap it. But you know what? I mean, it's fine. It's fine because I enjoy talking with you guys. You guys are my comics community. When we talk about like artists being like, you know, hermits and not hanging out with anybody and not having any social life, like this is my primary interaction with artists. Between this and the weekly figure drawing classes, this is my happy time talking with fellow creatives. So let's see here. Oh yeah, so I think that this is in reference to Lone Wolf and Cub. Amar says there's an entire series in the 60s based on it. He said they have an old 1970 movie streaming. I've seen it on HBO Max. All right, I'm gonna go look for that now, because I was completely unaware. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says it was called The Wolf and Cub. They have various animations, comics, and movies based on it. Kingslow Fitness, in terms of my comics, is mobile first. And then and Amar says Zatoshi, the Blind Swordsman. They had a series of all those as well in the 70s. Yeah, that's the one that I was trying to remember. And look at James is coming in with the receipts. Says there are 6 Lone Wolf and Cub movies. Okay, all right, worth checking out. I'll get on that and see. I don't know if I'll have time to watch any of them anytime soon, because it's always a matter of finding a compromise between things that both I and my wife want to watch, and I have very little time to just watch things on my own, because when I'm not watching something with her, I'm usually working, writing, or drawing. So it's been a lot of that. Let's see here. Dylan says hi to 2Dub Entertainment. Amar says, I do love soup, cook it all the time, which is perfect for someone who does not want to chew. Okay, and Dylan says Master Shi Heng Yi is a Shaolin monk. He's kind of in this self-help space. Okay, I'm gonna bookmark that. I will come back and take a look at him later, see what I can find out about him. Thank you for sharing that, Dylan. Amar says to Kingsville Fitness, and at this point, I'm going to start just reading some of these without putting all the comments on the screen as I go, just so I can kind of speed through here. Amar says to Kingsville Fitness that it's the same, seeing in black and white, because shadow is the absence of light, and when you it's easier to put this on the screen. And when and where you see light is where there's an opening in the shadows. I don't know if I would phrase it that way. I mean, I do agree shadow is the absence of light. But I don't know. I think there's a better way to describe it. The concept you're saying, I agree with. I think the way it's phrased is probably not the most elegant metaphor. But again, my brain is mushy. If I had a better metaphor, I would throw it out there. So I got no business criticizing. Let's see here. Herman says coffee's nasty, but I like coffee ice cream. Well, I mean, when I started drinking coffee, it was not because I liked the taste. I literally drank coffee because my commute was just getting so hard. I could not stay awake and I did not want to fall asleep on the road driving in or home from work. When I first started drinking coffee, in fact, instead of creamer, what I would do is I would get cocoa powder, like just the kind you use for hot chocolate. So I would make coffee and I would pour hot chocolate into it, which is basically what a mocha is anyway. And so I was making myself that every morning. And to be honest, that tasted delish. Eventually I switched to the sugar-free cocoa powder because I was just drinking so much cocoa that it was getting to be a lot. And then the cocoa powder started upsetting my stomach a little bit. The sugar-free version started upsetting my stomach. I guess aspartame can do that. And plus it's, more chemicals we don't need in our body. And then eventually I switched to the creamer, just getting like regular Coffee Mate, like the liquid creamer. I've been kind of on that tip since then. Let's see here. Kingsville Fitness says to Amar, that's why it's used more, part of the first steps. Then debate, go further with color. Amar says, itis is the station break bars you see in case of emergency when TV is off air. The itis tells you to just sit down for a minute. Let's see. Dylan says, I thought so, Amar. I asked because Cub keep being... Oh, he was asking about Lone Wolf and Cub as opposed to it kept being spelled as Club. Yeah, autocorrect is just making our lives a pain in the ass. I mean, autocorrect does more good than harm, but it's still... you're like, especially when you do it and you're just about to you hit send. It autocorrects right before you hit send on a message so that it spelled out what you wanted it to say, and then it changes it. But before you can stop yourself, you hit send, and now it says something you did not mean to say. Sometimes embarrassingly so. Let's see here. I guess when we're talking about black and white, Amar says, I was referring more to life in general versus the artistic process. Herman says, back to the sodium. He says, especially if hypertension runs in your family like mine, do half the season. He said, Dylan, I would use or mostly add my own seasoning for health reasons. I literally don't buy Chinese carryout. I do eat probably more Chinese food than I should, but we keep it to like maybe once a month at most. And when we do, we started like making steamed vegetables, and half of the plate will be steamed vegetables. So we're cutting the amount of sodium we're consuming in terms of the overall food and adding more vegetables and fiber to our diet because in between that. So that kind of helps leaven it. It doesn't excuse eating salty ass food, but we do. Let's see here. Dylan says, "You do you, boo." Thank you, Dylan. Hey, how you doing? Deckard 2019 says Hardman is an amazing artist. His new series at DC is excellent. You know what? I heard he was doing something new at DC, and I need to get on that. I still haven't read his Green Lantern year one that he did, but yeah, I'd heard. I was listening to an interview with him on the Word Balloon podcast, and they always have really great conversations. And Gabriel Hardman co-hosts one of the features that they do on there, so he's on there pretty regularly, and they always have pretty interesting conversations. James says I should put up more real art. I'll have to find my prints. Yeah, I will tell you that since we've moved, still have a ton of unpacking to do. My bookcases are almost full, but the only thing I have on my wall right now is I've got like a binder clip with a bunch of like figure drawings that I have just for reference of stuff to kind of, they're basically the drawings that I saved for my bad figure drawings. They're just like sketches that did not come out well that I want to come back and revisit. And there's only one up here now, but at one point I had 3 different sets because they were on different topics or different things that I wanted to explore, or just different sized paper. But just things that I wanted to keep hanging around to pull down for when I had time to draw, sketch, analyze. See, Herman says, I start getting headaches after eating the food. I would feel lethargic, drowsy afterwards. There's that itis. They said I had to change my eating habits for the better. That's good. That is, I'm glad you're making them healthy moves. And cosign, he says, you have to do the figure drawing for sure. You know, people always say, like, how do I get better? How do I improve? And I tell people, find a regular figure drawing class. Go every week. If you can't go every week, go once a month, but draw regularly. If you can't find one anywhere near you, go to an online session or use like, line of action or reference poses. But that drawing from the human figure, particularly in person, that it is not a magic bullet, but it is the number one way to improve as an artist. And I tell people that constantly. And some people take it, some people don't. Let's see here. Amar says, I've stopped making plans for the year. No more New Year's goals. I need to be surprised at the end of the year versus disappointed for not meeting goals. I don't necessarily make resolutions anymore, but what I do is I have projects. Like I said, my goal is to finish writing and draw the first issue of this new. Okay, I just said it's a goal. So I lied. I just straight lied to you right now. But doing the first issue of the Pandora's Box comic, I want to get that done and get it online. And honestly, at some point, I need to dive into running a Kickstarter campaign. So I want to get it online as a way to build up an audience for the eventual Kickstarter campaign for the first issue print volume of that comic. And what I want to do is I actually want to do it as a process issue. So, Kickstarter comics are usually priced a lot higher than what you would normally get at a comic book shop, where you normally buy a comic for like $5 for 24 pages. Kickstarter campaigns, the comics are often like $10 or $15 for a single issue. But the printing cost for printing a single issue print on demand versus printing a small trade, it's not that much more. So what I'm thinking is I might try to do a process edition that has the comic, all of my thumbnails, layouts, script, like the stuff, all the back matter that I normally put in a normal comic, but do it for like every single page of it. So it's almost like an artist edition, and do that. So maybe it's like around 100 pages. So if you're paying a premium of like $15 or $20, you're getting like a small trade. So it's like, I may sell it my goal is to sell it for a higher price point, but to deliver more value for that higher price point. And we'll see how that goes. We'll see how paper costs go in 2026. We'll see how crowdfunding goes. We'll see if I even have there's an audience for it. So it's here. Kingsville Fitness says 2026 totals out of 1. What just came to mind? Maybe the title of some type, The Art of the Start, something like that. Okay, let's see here. Kingslow Fitness also says, watching the older heads draw and drawing when I'm in exhaustion mode at times helps to know that I can do art for life. Yes, it is. It is very. Art is one of those things you can do for your entire life. I see Chris had asked about Howard Chaykin. It is Howard Chaykin. I am posting his name in the chat. It's Chaykin. Let's see here. And I just realized that this whole time I've been streaming off of the Wi-Fi. I never actually plugged in to the my Ethernet cable. I hope that it hasn't been glitching or running slow. Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness said to Amars, let's see, sleeping visually in black and white, meditation. It said, I think you can control color when I thought about it. Herman says, I would probably try to do a black and white style manga comic. I like the Akira artist style, but is there anybody else manga style that overtly complex in that style? Well, that was what I was when I mentioned Masamune Shiro, along with Ghost in the Shell. Masamune Shiro, his manga, I would put his stuff right up there. Katshiro Otomo is the guy who did Akira and Domu. Masamune Shiro did Ghost in the Shell, Appleseed. Those two, there's multiple animes based on them. But he's a manga artist. And I would put those two, to me, are like two of my favorite manga artists. After that, slightly less detailed is Katsuya Terada, and he's a little bit more like, I would call him the Richard Corbin of comics. He's he's definitely younger than Corbin, but his stuff is sort of like, it's got a very indie, grimy feel to it, still incredibly well drawn. There are a lot of detailed manga artists out there. A lot of times we think of manga as just being this super simplified style. I'm trying to think of who else I can think of off the top of my head. Honestly, when I think of manga after those two, one of my earliest experiences was actually American manga with Adam Warren. I don't know who originally created the Dirty Pair, but Adam Warren's Dirty Pair comics. And since then, his very manga styled empowered comic, I would say he is somebody who, he's an American artist, but his stuff is very squarely like manga, and he's very worth checking out. I haven't read a ton of Berserk. I think just the first volume, but is it Kenshiro Kentaro, I can't remember his name. I think it's Kentaro something with an M. I can't remember. But the creator, who sadly only passed away a couple of years ago, but the creator of Berserk, his stuff is pretty detailed, and he was of heavy influence on Joe Mad. So definitely worth checking out there. Honestly, I gotta tell you, I'm pretty sure that the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel is still active, and you can go back and watch their backlist. If you just go through and watch, they have whole videos where they just sit down and they give you reviews of some of the most amazing manga in manga history. There's history lessons in manga on YouTube if you want to just go and look. There's plenty. I would say that the Cartoonist Kayfabe is a really great place to start in terms of looking at manga artists and just showing you sort of a lot of what's out there. Also, there's a guy who does comic book video essays named Matt with 3 T's. And he had a really good mini documentary that came out last year, on sort of the history of how manga, not the history of manga in Japan, but the history of how manga was brought over to the United States, starting in like the late 70s, early 80s onward, the publishing side of getting manga into America. That's very much also worth checking out. So there's lots of great resources. Let's see here. Herman said, I want to do something really detailed, just not for my current things I'm trying to work on. Dylan says, fun fact, many older folk, boomers and older folks tend to have more black and white dreams. Due to this being in black and white. I mean, I always felt like, I don't know, my dreams do have color in them, but they say that people don't dream in color, but I've seen color in my dreams. I don't know what to tell you. That's not me being defensive about being boomer. Yeah. I'm getting into that age where people are gonna be like, okay, boomer, I'm getting in that demo and I got to live with that. Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness says, I've been addicted to Shonen Jump, took screenshots of my favorite to redraw from. And Herman says, my issue is figuring out what action or pose to put the character in, but I want it to relate to the scene and not just the drawing of the character, to have them integrated into the story truly. Well, there's two things that I have in response to that. One, believe it or not, as old as How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way is, there's a great diagram. The whole book is a masterpiece. But John Buscema has a particular diagram where he shows, I can't remember if it's Captain America throwing a punch. I want to say it's Captain America, but it's a character throwing a punch. And he does all of the poses. So it's like 8 or 9 poses on one page. And he shows the character leaned all the way back and shows you through the arc, the middle punch, and then the all the way to the end. And his point is that he shows you these poses and then he shows you separately, here's the very first pose of him all the way leaned back, and here's the very last pose all the way back. And he shows you that the most dynamic pose is not the middle of the action. It's either the beginning of the action or the end of the action. Cause and effect. So when it comes to picking shots, I look at it more as what is either the start of the action or the end of the action. And then once you have that pose, if it doesn't feel integrated into your scene, it's about what angle you're showing that pose from. So you have two things you have to balance. It's not just the selection of the pose, it's how do you frame the pose? How tight or wide, how tight or how wide you are when you show that pose. And are you showing that pose from below? Are you showing that pose from above? Are you showing that pose in profile? So you've got a lot more tools in order to make a compelling image beyond just what pose am I picking. The pose I'm picking is just one factor in many of the elements that you use to compose each panel. And then what you want to do is you want to try and compose each panel so that it makes a logical progression, so that you can follow the story. So you don't have a character who's heading this way in one panel, but then heading the opposite direction in the next panel. You want to find a way. It's not, doing keyframes like animation, but I think that there's a lot of, storyboarding is not the same as making comics. But I think that you can learn a lot about visual storytelling by studying storyboards as well. But it's all about shot selection and composition. That's the thing. It sounds like it sounds like the struggle is that you're thinking about shot pose selection when it really should be composition, which is pose selection plus shot selection. I mean, pose selection plus framing. If that makes any sense, and if that's helpful, and if not, feel free to let me know, and I can go on and on, or you can ask a follow-up, and I can see if I can come up with something that's more useful. But also, we're already like, at an hour and a half here, so I gotta get to the end of these comments. Let's see here. Amar says, I dream in color and see life for the most part in black and white. Maybe you're colorblind. Let's see here. Kingslow Fitness says this episode actually reminds me of web dev, mobile first, then expansion for bigger screens, the debate of where to start first. Let's see here, working with writing and drawing. Okay, yeah, Herman says, right. I was trying to find something to watch. HBO Max have a ton of Godzilla and Wolf and Cub stuff, so it's crazy. I was thinking maybe doing something with the samurai sci-fi mash. Absolutely. You absolutely should do that. And by the way, speaking of, it's not manga, but there's a really good comic book by well, there's two. I think they're both written by Rick Remender, but one is called Tokyo Ghost, and it's drawn by Sean Gordon Murphy. And then there's one called what is that other one? It's drawn by Lanil Yu, Silent Dragon. That's what it is. There's Silent Dragon and Tokyo Ghost. They're two books that came out from Image around mid 2000s. They're both very well drawn, and they have a very manga feel to them, even though they're Western comics. And honestly, I've only read Silent Dragon. I have not read Tokyo Ghost yet, which is a shame because I love Sean Gordon Murphy's art. I think he's another one of those artists who, much like Ashley Wood, I love his art so much that I had to stop looking at it because I realized I was starting to ape it. And that happens with a lot of my favorite artists, where at a certain point I have to put them down for a little bit. Otherwise, I will just copy them. Let's see here. All right, skipping through a couple of these. Some more Lone Wolf and Cub conversation. Apparently, there's a bunch on Tubi. And if you watch Tubi on the browser, you can bypass the ads. That's a good tip, Amar. Thank you. Kingslow Fitness says, I'm seeing now to create individual panels and organize them on the page. When done in web design, break through even to look over different panels and ask the order of the layout. And Herman says, I'm getting into more figure drawing and mechanical art. By the way, as a side point, let me jump back over here to this comic book page. I am a fan of keeping my page layouts relatively. Hang on. Oh, I tried to zoom in. All right. I am a fan of trying to keep your page layouts relatively simple. Only because I'm not against complicated page layouts. People like Howard Chaykin and Walt Simonson are known for dynamic page design. And I know a lot of the Image comics, McFarlane has those crazy page layouts. It's not that I am anti those things. It's that I want my story. I want to work on my storytelling just within the frame, make my storytelling strong enough that if you just had it as a 6-panel or 9-panel grid, it would still be compelling. So I've been reaching back. Like, I didn't grow up reading the comics of Kirby. I didn't get into Kirby until I was in my 30s, to be honest. I always respected his place in the industry for everything he created, but I was never into him. I'm into him now because he's somebody who, even though he'll have characters breaking the panel borders, he could just as easily make a plain 6-panel grid with no characters jumping out of them feel like you're watching the opening of Saving Private Ryan. Like, you can feel like the most action, dramatic, dynamic page because he knew how to control the viewer's experience and flow through the page panels, even if the grid itself, if the frame of the page was still very, very simple. And I feel like for me, it's more about learning how to walk before I run. So that's why I tend not to go in for really crazy page layouts. If someone can pull it off, here's the thing: if people can pull it off, pull it off. This isn't prescriptive. This is more about me almost like eating my own vegetables. I feel like I want to do things at its most simple level before trying to do anything fancy. And I think it's just, I do enjoy comics that have complicated page layouts, but I don't aspire to it. If I don't do that, if I don't make complicated page layouts, I don't feel like I'm a lesser creator for doing it. So it's something that I appreciate, but don't feel like I need to do. Let's see here. Kingsville Fitness said Robotech is my ish on that reference. Dylan says I mostly eat Mexican and Italian food. Burritos, tacos, and pasta. They're fairly cheap to make. I've got where I posted Howard Chaykin in the chat. Kingsville Fitness says I'm thinking human body parts in boxes and placing them together. Yeah, it's a great Loomis technique there. Good on you for picking up that. I find it very simple, helpful for me when I'm trying to, particularly with foreshortening, to put things inside of primitive boxes and cylinders and work out the proportions and the perspective that way. Let's see here. And Dylan said the quality of the stream is fine. I'm happy to hear that. Let's see here. And Herman says to King, I said, thanks. I also look at Pat Lee. He does the Transformers art, a lot of mech work. You know what? I haven't had a chance to read any of Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers, but I love his stuff. He almost feels like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles doing Transformers. Like, his stuff has a really nice... Okay, that's a great example. Daniel Warren Johnson is like the Western Katsuya Terada. There's a lot of overlap in terms of how they frame and tell stories. There's a lot of overlap in terms of actual physical style. One's just a Japanese artist, one's American, but definitely worth looking. And Daniel Warren Johnson also has a YouTube channel. So there's a lot of creators who I admire their work and I still don't have time to consume their content, but he's another guy who, aside from being a great comic creator, I want to watch more of his YouTube videos as well. So let's see here. But you mentioned Pat Lee, who I have not heard from in ages. Last I remember of Pat Lee, Pat Lee did do the Dreamwave era Transformers comic stuff. I think he went into doing just concept development for entertainment, like video games and animation and that sort of thing. But I can't remember the last thing I remember, honestly, was that Punisher, where he was like, I think it was like a Punisher Ghost Rider thing where he was like an angel or something. It was really weird. Not my favorite of his work, but he's a pretty cool ass creator. All right. Dylan asks, what was your first manga? Mine was Ion. My first manga, I think when I was talking about that, The Dirty Pair, I remember Gray Digital Target, which was published by Viz Media in the United States. But I will tell you the first series I really went on a rampage for, I don't know if it was Studio Proteus or whether Dark Horse had already started publishing it, but it was a series called Outlanders. And I can't pronounce the author's name, but I discovered that book, and it was basically an alien invasion story where the invading force, kind of a Romeo and Juliet story, the princess of the invading alien species lands on Earth. And I think she comes down to conquer, and she's here to, destroy Earth. She meets an Earthling, I think kidnaps him. She gets stranded on Earth. At some point, I can't remember if she loses her memory or what, but she ends up slowly falling in love with this one human Earthling, and then eventually discovers more human allies, and finally decides that humanity is worth saving, and she ends up rebelling against her people and joining the human rebellion force fighting against the aliens. Let's see here. King's Little Fitness says Cave Babe. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Amar says I watched Matt as well. He says I'm still finishing that video, the manga documentary video. Herman says I dream in color, and I'm a boomer. I'm right there with you. Dylan dreams in color. We're all dreaming in color. And Amar says I'm a Gen Xer, which I would say I am too. Yeah. Let's see here. Herman says my comps suck. You mean comps in terms of composition? Well, I mean, here's the thing. We all suck at the beginning. Composition is one of the hardest things to learn. The way to learn good composition, or what I recommend, is you just try to make a composition, and then you go and you look at, are there artists, either you can look at film, you can look at animation, you can look at comics, but look at people that have compositions that do catch your eye, and then literally like I've literally set up with comic book pages and done sketches breaking down people's work. In fact, this is something to do. I will do a breakdown, a composition analysis. Next live stream is going to be us doing a composition analysis. Everybody throw in the comments who you want to see me do composition analysis of. Like, just name some comic creators and I'll go find some reference. That's what we'll do next week, is we're going to pull some up on the iPad, and I will just do some doodles and sketches, and I will analyze what I think is working and why, and we can talk. We'll do a little composition deep dive on some comic creators. If no one thinks of anybody that they want, I know of plenty of creators that I would pick to do an analysis of. So we'll try that. Let's see here. Dylan says, I'm a zillennial. And Kingslow Fitness says, clip this. Best for last. Okay. All right. So I have caught up on the chat. So I'll tell you what, for anyone who is on the, if no one wants to throw comments on the chat here, feel free to leave them either on the video. You can leave a comment, or you can leave it if you're on the public Discord. You can let me know who you'd like to see me do a composition analysis of. So we've already got Amar came up with Lee, Kirby, and Ditko for starters. I'm definitely down for doing a Kirby composition analysis, and Ditko as well. I went through not too long. Well, no, it was years ago now. It was probably like 5 years ago. But I had never read the first 25 issues of Spider-Man. I got one of those big black and white Marvel Essentials of Spider-Man. I love those. I mean, honestly, I really do think I've got an affinity for black and white comics, because if you give me the choice of reading the color version of the comics versus the black and white reprints of the Marvel Essentials, I generally will take the black and white reprints. Like, one of my favorites is Walt Simonson. He did the early issues of Marvel's X Factor, that X-Men spinoff, and I have the original issues in color. But God, I love that black and white reprint edition. Just seeing it with just Simonson's inks. So, all right, we've got some good comments here. We've got Sean Murphy. We got Jim Lee. We got John Byrne. Let's see here. Kingsville Fitness says, no Marvel Comics drawing, looking for composition analysis, Transformers versus Robotech. Now, that's a tough one, Transformers versus Robotech, because Transformers comics, to me, they always look super complicated. But I can give it a shot. And also, I don't really know what, in terms of the verses for them. Now, this is a great one. Matt Baker. The only work of his that I really know is Rhymes with Lust. But Matt Baker was one of the early Black comic creators. That's a great pull right there. I have a great book called Invisible Men, on the history of African American comic book creators. And I've only read like probably the first 25% of the book, but Matt Baker is in there. Ha! Amar says Stelfreeze. Stelfreeze would be a pleasure to do an analysis of, because he is one of the guys, to me, he's so clean. He's such a great storyteller. These are some great, we might end up, this will probably be something where it may take a while to get through this. What I might do is maybe what I'll do is once a month, we'll do a different creator. So I'll pick one to start with, and we can go through this, because this is going to be a lot. Herman says, I also have the Hulk Essentials. This is, man, I love black and white also. Yeah, so there's some power there for the black and white. All right. Okay, so on that note, if there's any other people that you guys want to recommend. Leave comments on. I'm gonna wrap things up here. You can leave comments on the video. You can leave comments on the public Discord channel, and we'll dig into this. I think we probably will start with Lee and Kirby because I mean Kirby, he's the king, right? So we'll probably start with Kirby and we'll work from there. But I'll keep note of all of these recommendations, and we'll let's see here. Duad Ano Anya Bal. I can't pronounce that name. Oh, the Brother Man artist. Okay, we can put that on there. All right. So, on that note, if you enjoy these live streams, would like to get additional bonus live streams, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free newsletter at substack.com/@Jeremy. If you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, by the way, if you guys, while I'm doing this wrap up, if you haven't hit that like button, smash that like button. If you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up Morning Star, my most recent comic. It is a retelling of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion, issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character designs, thumbnails, page layouts, and more. You can also pick up my art book, Wound, The Art of Jeremy Burley, Volume 1. And if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel, there are video book flip-throughs of all the comics, so you can see what's inside before picking them up. All right, guys, thank you for hanging out. This has been a great conversation. That's it for now. Go be creative.